Hi everybody, welcome back to Overtime. My name is Art Miles. So last week was part one of our interview with David Martin. Today we have part two as we continue to talk about his history at Fox 35. But before we get started, I want to thank everybody for the comments and the letters and we didn't get any letters, but you know what I'm trying to say. All the comments that we got online regarding episode one, and I've heard from 5 or 6 different of my former co-workers who I'll be interviewing in the near future. Thank you for reaching out, or at least responding to me reaching out to you, and we'll be having some new interviews soon. Coming up on this episode, it's David Martin, part 2. But you are no stranger to getting injured on the air. It has happened to you in the past. I recall another time sitting very comfortably in my edit bay. It was a little cold. I had my jacket on. It was very nice and cozy. And you were hopping around on a inflatable something or other and perhaps broke a foot or a leg?
Yes. I was doing a live shot for Good Day Orlando at an inflatables convention, and we were running around inflatables. That's what you do on inflatables.
Yep.
And I was interviewing the spokesperson for the inflatable convention, bouncing, and I bounced from one pillow to what I thought was another pillow.
No.
And it was the floor of the convention center that I landed on.
Right.
And I hit it hard with another thud. And
On the air live,
I heard my foot crack. And this is back when YouTube was kind of taking off. Mm-hmm. And I knew I didn't want to be a viral sensation.
Right. You played it cool. You had enough forethought to say, whatever I do for the next 5 seconds may be what people remember me for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So you played it very cool.
Yeah, and
I don't know if anybody even knew.
And I wound up climbing up another inflatable and doing a zip line down it with a broken foot. And then when we signed off, Paolo, the cameraman, at that point noticed I had turned basically white, green, pale as a ghost. And I think I passed out, or I had to sit down because I was close to passing out. And then we just rushed off to the emergency room. I got into a boot right away. And I was on the air the next day, I might add.
Were you on the air back at the station, or did you go out live somewhere?
I did live shots with the boot.
Very good. See, now that should be on the resume tape.
Yeah, we didn't have any.
Yeah, that definitely put that.
Yeah, I didn't have any 3 weeks of spend some time at home and think about what you did. We had to get right back into action.
You break your foot now, we'll give you a web camera and you can report from home for a couple of weeks until you heal. Right. No, he was back up and running the next day. But just to back up a little bit, you had your success with e-news, and the internet at the time was really blowing up, and there were so many things where you would say, hey, check this out, or I bet you didn't know about this. And we learned so much about the internet through the e-news show that you put together. But then after a few years, it kind of transitioned into something else. What happened after that?
A fun story about that e-news. We did a couple of nights on how to get around your company firewall so that you could surf the internet while you were on the company clock. And a famous hotelier in town was so upset with that, he called the news station and said, how dare you publish these stories about employees not working?
First of all, thank you for watching.
He wanted the story.
Appreciate the viewership.
Yeah, he did not like the series we were doing, and to Fox's credit, we stuck with it and did it anyways. So, fun story. He hasn't talked to me since.
Stuck to your guns. That happens in business, I guess. You did your job. You did what you were supposed to do. You got the story out there for us to see, and we know about firewalls now. Who even knew about firewalls back then even? So you were probably not only explaining how to get around them, but you were explaining what firewalls were.
It was an education. So after E! News, I went back to general news for quite some time. Spent many years chasing the crime and grime for the 10 o'clock lead.
Yeah, we were changing. As a station, we were changing. We were adding hours of news. Yep. We added a morning show. We completely gutted the building and built ourselves a state-of-the-art newsroom with all glass and all that. So a lot of changes were happening.
And the big reason is because we became owned by Fox. We changed from Meredith to Fox, and we were now considered an O&O, owned and operated by Fox. And that was a big deal for us. We loved it.
Very, very true.
Yeah, it meant more resources for us, more of a TV news-minded upper management. So it was excellent.
We added many hours of news coverage. The morning show, would go from an hour to 2 to 4. I remember the set that they built, and maybe we'll get to some of them as well. Michael Brooks, Melissa Ross.
Yeah, that's a good
Doug
point.
Kammerer.
People know me as the Good Day Orlando dude, but I was never part of the original Good Day Orlando crew. I was
Graham.
brought on
Yep.
much later in
Yeah,
that
you were
launch.
brought on much later with that, Christine Van Blockland.
Yeah.
But there was a time where we did no morning news, and then suddenly we had a whole morning staff. We had people that were in the building round the clock rather than just one or two people in master control. So then suddenly we became this 3-shift station where we always had people there and we always had people at the desk. And remember there was a time when the assignment desk, we would go home at the end of the night and it would just be dark and that was it.
Now it's a 24/7 operation.
Yeah, now it's a 24/7 operation, but you were there, and I remember those days of just like turn off the lights at the end of the 10 o'clock show's over, and then that's it until, wasn't there a time, when there was a 5 p.m. show for a brief time, and then I think that went away, and it was only the 10 o'clock show for a while.
Yeah, in hindsight,
And
I think
the 5 came back.
it would have helped us, I believe, if we had launched in '98 with a few more shows throughout the day. I think it was. I remember that was a bit of a struggle for us at 10 o'clock to always have to consider the catch-up factor, or were we behind in stories? Because
Right.
Because when we went
The
off the
2
air,
o'clock meetings, there'd be a 2 o'clock meeting, and then that 2 o'clock meeting was to discuss what was going to air 8 hours later.
and we had gone off the air at 10:30 the night before, so 23 and a half hours in between our newscasts.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, the news being old was the concern, and then there'd be the occasional time where the rundown would just get blown out because something was happening, and then it was like, oh, good, we're going to be on a fresh story as it's happening, rather than talk about something that was 6 hours ago. So yeah, they're growing pains. I guess you would just call those growing pains.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think the advantage of having the Fox O&O behind us. They had years of, at that point, experience running local stations and, of course, the cable news channel. So it was just nice to have that mothership up in New York overseeing us.
And then we started to have, new employees would start to come in with more experience, and we were gradually changing. Change news directors, change assistant news directors, change producers constantly. But the station was growing. But you're one of the few people there that can tell us what it was like from the beginning and how much it's grown, and now to compare it to what it was on March 1st of '98 to what it is now. It's just, you can't even compare it.
No, I can't. It's so much more. I feel like everybody who runs that station today has so much more background than we did, because we were kids when they hired us.
Yeah, I did feel like that too. I didn't think there was anybody above 30 years old that worked there at one point, it felt like to me, except for our boss, Bill Avery.
Yeah, and I love Bill, and I think he would agree that he hired young, and probably what the thought was, this is a huge market size for most of us, a huge jump, so we're going to be there for a long time, and
yeah,
I'm proof that.
And there we were, like everybody that was part of the original crew or those original first few years, I felt like they were there a long time, and when somebody left, it was like there was a sadness, like, oh, this person is leaving, they've been there since the beginning, and then we'd have the going away parties and stuff, but nowadays in news, that's a recurring thing where people are constantly changing out. It's a different feeling now for sure.
Yeah, and I've seen hundreds come and go, no question about it. And now I'm the old guy. I see someone come in at 24. I'm like, aren't you too young to be in this newsroom? I mean,
that's a tough one, because we all know if this person is 24, that means they weren't alive when the show started. That hits me, and I don't even work there anymore, and that hits me in a funny way when I see somebody that's on air and you see them and you realize, oh, they weren't even born when this all started. That's a weird feeling, because we went from being the young people working there, and everybody was just young, to suddenly being like, oh, I can't relate to this person that wasn't even alive when September 11th happened. It's a weird feeling, and that's another thing that I remember very well, and I'm sure you have memories of September 11th. I believe even you had the lead story that night when you had discussed or talked to an airline stewardess who normally flew one of those routes. Do you recall something like that?
Yeah, she was. She had worked for American, and she was an airline attendant who had taken the day off or had to take the day off for a personal reason. And because of that reason, she's alive today. And we interviewed her just days after 9/11, and she was...
That was our lead story, I believe, because
you're right. It was
no one else had that. No one else had that story. I mean, we had to lead with something that nobody else had. Because I was very new to news also, even 3 years into it, I still felt new to it when some story like this happened, where we kind of signed off and they went to national, and I was saying to myself, I mean, they're calling me into work, and I was like, what are we even doing here? Why was it just not tossing to know what is our purpose? What are we doing? And then you find a local story to tie it all in, and you talk with somebody who was there locally that could connect it all back to Central Florida.
Yeah, 9/11 was tough. That was a. I mean,
there was no time to deal with it because you were working.
Right, we were just in, all of us at that point, 24/7 coverage, and it didn't really hit personally any of us probably till a few days after the fact, when maybe we started slowing down the coverage a little bit, and it was just devastating. So sad.
I knew it was something was definitely different when I came into the building and I was called in, can you please come in? And as soon as I get in, I see the TV screens, and one of our sports anchors, Penn Holderness, is at the anchor desk, because there wasn't anybody else that had come in yet. So he was at the anchor desk, just tossing back and forth to whatever information we had, and tossing back, but he was actually sitting at the anchor desk, which I hadn't seen him sit there before by himself or with a co-anchor. I think he was sitting with Ann Craig at the anchor desk, and it was just, everything was off, everything was different that day for sure.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to talk devastation, and that between 9/11 and Pulse, those two were probably the most heart-wrenching stories for us to cover. I'm sure I'm missing a few, but those two.
I'm sure you are. I mean, with the hurricanes and the devastation and the space shuttle.
But 9/11 and Pulse had the sheer volume of fatalities and loss of life.
And the Pulse was another one where, at the time of night it was happening, none of us were at work. And then you get that call at like 2 or 3 in the morning saying, hey, can you come in? Those are the bad calls that you get.
Because it was a Sunday morning when typically newsrooms across the nation are in their lowest staffing mode, right?
Correct. So when you get a phone call at that time of night, you immediately answer it because something's wrong.
Yeah, I was not the first they called, because we do have some weekend crews, obviously. But
correct. Yes.
I know we're jumping ahead, but I mean, I'm the fun guy on Good Day Orlando, and then all of a sudden the boss calls me and says, I need you to put a suit and tie on. You're going down to do. We have dozens at that point. He said dozens. We didn't know the full body count, but dozens of people massacred at a nightclub. I couldn't. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was trying to figure out what did he just say, but I knew we had to go. In fact, I texted you like an hour later. I said, "You won't believe what I'm doing," and that was so tragic.
And that's nothing. Once again, just like starting a TV station, that's nothing you can prepare yourself for or train for. When you go off to school or to college and you say, "I'm going to get into journalism," these things never cross your mind.
No, they don't teach you. I mean, I didn't go to school for journalism, so I don't know what they're teaching the students today on how to do TV or how to do journalism. But what they don't teach you, I don't think they probably ever can, is what you learn on the job, which is the people aspect. In the end, you're dealing with people and you're telling their stories. And if on a story like Pulse, it's so deeply wounding and heartbreaking that you have to remain as professional as you can on the front face,
right? And doing it live,
exactly. And behind you, you're falling apart.
You have to try and deal with that on your own time, because as you know, when something like that happens, there's no commercial breaks. There's no, if I recall, after the Pulse, one of the light spots in such a dark story was what you covered, which was at the blood bank, and the lines wrapped around the buildings. And I recall you were walking around and somebody's card pulled up as one of the PIOs maybe, and he didn't even get out of the car and you were already there to talk to him. He was a former TV reporter from another station, I believe.
Pat Michaels.
And Yes, it was. And then he gets out of his car, and you're right there, and the people are wrapped around. And then finally we get the helicopter shot to see what it is you're talking about. And it's the people all the way around the building, ready to donate blood, ready to help try and make a difference. It was something great to see in the middle of all that terrible, terrible footage.
Yeah, and then seeing the memorial building outside the Dr. Phillips Center downtown. That's what I covered in the days afterwards, and that was just, it was very hard.
Yeah. It's just one of those things they don't prepare you. You go off to say, I'm going to be a journalist and I'm going to get to do a lot of things and make some great memories, but then sometimes you got to deal with things like that. But then there are other times when you get to come up with ideas on your own. And at a time, of course, when internet and YouTube became very popular, you had an idea and you came into my edit bay one day and pitched something. And do you remember what you said that day?
Oof, I don't, but I was so excited about it. What did I say?
You said something about, not even the news director, it was our VP said something about, we need to make some changes. Anybody have any ideas? And it was just something along the lines of interacting with an audience based on footage that you see on YouTube or something. And whatever the pitch was, you said to me, I said, I'm behind you 100%. And then you said, that's actually the idea that I had, because originally I think during the pilots, I was standing behind you for the News Remixed. And I was actually on the shot. It's odd to look back at now, where I'm actually I'm behind you with my headset on, making stupid little comments as we talked about different videos. We did 6 or 7 or 20 different pilots for what eventually became the News Remixed with David Martin.
No question about it. My proudest moment at Fox 35, because let's be honest, that was you and I created something from scratch. Now it was a ripoff of an existing format, Talk Soup.
Sure, Talk Soup, Tosh.0, but they weren't doing it in a news way that we were.
Correct.
So yeah, we had our own little twist on it, and it was successful enough so that our boss, Jeff, after seeing one of our numerous pilots, he went straight to the VP and said, you need to see this, and we weren't even ready for him to see it, I don't think, at that point, were we? And he took it right to him.
It looks like Florida's high-speed rail is just not going to happen. Governor Scott axed the tracks.
Try another one.
Derailed the rail.
Boring.
Poo-poo the choo-choo?
Ding! Thank you, Brazilian cameraman Paulo Almeida. Don't worry, though. Someone has already made a ton of dough from this project.
Who?
The guys who made the mock-up animation that all the TV stations have been using for a half-decade. It's so old, it came delivered to us on film reels. So, Art, I've got a job for you. Put that on DVD tomorrow.
Sure. Let's get to work.
And then, soon after that, after another few more test runs, episode 1 was on the air. Do you remember what episode 1 was?
I do. Addiction to Facebook.
Oh, it was Addiction to Facebook? I was going to say it was Baggy Pants. Okay. Well, we probably did 2 or 3 that week.
I don't remember, because we had a local launch and a national launch.
Oh, you're right.
And I was wrong. You're right. Facebook was our national launch.
I forgot about the national launch too. That's right. It was kind of a whole different thing. So, but to even get to that, you have to have some sort of success. So locally, you had some success with the News Remix with David Martin to the point where it got to be national. Now, explain to the audience, what does it mean to go national, and what is an O&O station?
Right. So you and I produced a segment called the News Remixed, and it aired locally in Orlando. It got the attention of our corporate office, and they said, we need to let this segment play in Chicago, LA, New York, Dallas, Atlanta, Minneapolis, wherever we have another owned and operated Fox station. When you and I got that news, that was huge.
Yeah, that was very big.
And we
deal.
shut down production for a couple of months to figure out how we can do this on a broad national scale. Because what you and I were doing was very local story-based stuff.
Right. Yeah, the Baggy Pants was actually a very local story.
Right. Gary Siplin wanted to have them outlawed. And and that was such a great episode. And then we had to get a workflow going with our legal team, because now we were exposing ourselves to so many more lawsuits.
Yes.
And because of
we nitpicked.
Because we were in uncharted territory, using clips from YouTube and remixing them and having fun of them and making fun of them and using them. So there was a fine line of using fair use and just stealing things, and we were.
Yeah, it was much like the early rap stars who were sampling from artists. And at the time, it was just like a free-for-all of sample this, sample that, take that from this record, and then eventually there came a time where it's like, I don't know if you should be doing that. And we kind of went through that as well over time.
We did.
But not before we had a lot of great success with it. The first success came with an Emmy nomination for host, I believe. And you, on the first year of nominations, you won the Emmy the first year. And I don't remember the full title of it. It was for host in I forget what category it was.
It was a weird category because it was so not newsy, and it was nice because it wasn't news, right? Because when I think of Emmy, I think of television. I think of
and
entertainment.
We benefited from odd categories because the next year there was a category called interactivity.
Congratulations to David Martin.
It's fun to bring humor every once in a while to a newscast. Lord knows we need it every once in a while, so we get to do that. We're paid to do that. I can't believe we get paid to do that. This is for my wife because she puts up with the fact that I spend pretty much 17 hours a day with this baboon here producing this show.
And that's what we were all about. We were interacting with the audience, with the YouTubers. They would say something, we would bounce back at, and so yeah, we were all about interactivity. And so for the second year, the Emmy for that category, and from that point, things really started to take off for you because after that, then the idea came of how can we turn this into possibly a 30-minute show. Was the half-hour show successful for Art and David? Find out next week. Here's a clue. I'm doing a web show from my porch. Thanks for the drone footage, Walter.